All right, you white motherfuckers, all eyes on me. This is the I Refuse podcast. Mr. Fox, the I Refuse podcast here, back to give you some more good stuff. Been a while, but we're back. So I want to get up on here and talk to you guys about. They decided to bring back Verzuz, right? This time it's for the ladies. Tyrese versus Tank. Who y'all got? I say the winner gets custody of Genuine, but that's just me. Because it's long been said that Genuine lives on the road, and he is clearly doing everything else but singing. It's clear that the man's been lip singing. And y'all are on TikTok every week reminding us of his dance moves. It it's given tough acting to acting. But back to Tyrese and Tank. Ugh. Tank has the catalog, right? Tank has been steadily putting out music since 2002. Tyrese has gone in and out of movies, doesn't have a lot of albums, but he's got some songs that stick. So I'm a little curious how this will go. Tank has the producing and the writing on his side. Tank has worked with people from Aaliyah to Monica to I think Chris Brown, kind of keeping his name out there. Tyrese, though, I mean, he's got what? Sweet Lady, Lately, Signs of Love Making. How you gonna act like that? He's got he's got a song from 2000 Watts. Um, let's see, what else has he got? He's got Shame. It really would be surprising. A lot of y'all saying Tyrese has it. I say Tank probably has it a little bit more. I mean, they got some TGT stuff. Tyrese has worked with Genuine. Tank has worked with Genuine, but Tank has worked with more people, I think. It, Ty, Versus hasn't been the same since they've been bought out. They done went with conservative investors, been bought out by white people, and they haven't had a steady flow of verses in a while. Still kind of in a pandemic kind of situation, but there are some verses I feel like would be back on the level. You can get some couple of legacy acts, you can get some more of the icons together. I get you want to do something for the ladies, but Valentine's Day was last month, and neither one of these guys are doing music on a regular basis. I mean, Tyrese still has his voice. He was down at the women's event, hooting and hollering on stage where he should be, versus hooting and hollering down on the IG crying about the ex-wife and all this other stuff. I really feel like maybe the verses will be good for Tyrese's image. People tend to forget with all the shenanigans, Tyrese has vocals. Tyrese has music. Nobody's really checking for the Fast and Furious movies. They got about 25 of them. He I don't think Tyrese needs to tour as much. Um, if there's anybody that's going to possibly wash both Tyrese and Tank, would be Genuine. Not even going to hold you. Um, I think that's possibly what needs to happen. I mean, they could do a three-way versus, since they're more closely associated with each other since, I don't know, the last 10 to 15 years, because they've done stuff together. They've also, Tank has done background vocals or background work with Genuine and Aaliyah. Um, Tyrese, I don't know if Tyrese has done stuff for Tank and Genuine, but I think that would be more epic. It's just Tyrese has been doing movies more and being corny as of late. I'm just saying. Tank, he's doing the podcast thing. He's a musician. He does the piano and the keyboards, church kid. Um, and definitely is the active performer. So it'll be interesting. I I might log in for a little bit and see what's going on. Hopefully there will be no technical difficulties. But above anything else, this definitely will be a trip down memory lane of sorts. Because Tyrese goes back to like the mid to late '90s, and then Tank has covered the 2000s, the last 25 years. I was in the military when Tank came out. Maybe I Deserve was everywhere. There's probably like one or two songs after that off that album. And then he came out with something else after that. I'm thinking about Tank's catalog now. You got Force of Nature, Better Man. Let's see. After that, it kind of gets hazy, but he definitely has Sex, Love, and Pain. That was a good album. What else? Got Sex, Love, and Pain. He's got a couple of the Temptations songs. It gets a little hazy, but steady releases. Probably a good 10 or 15 Tank songs. Tyrese, I'm not entirely sure. It'll be good, I think. It'll be good. But I definitely want the winner to have custody of Genuine. Um, because Genuine's not clocked anymore for live performing. He can't do his dance moves from the '90s. Where he was pop locking in the Differences video with the broom and all black. Totally jarring. I remember I was sitting there, and Differences, probably the most played song and music video from his third album. Just thinking, okay, this is a ballad. This is very smooth. And all of a sudden, you pop locking in front of a storefront with a broom. But he can't do that now. The most he can do is slide one foot to the left, slide another foot to the right, and do the bobblehead move. He's not probably able to do all the different joint pop locking moves that he did in the '90s, right? Now it's gotten to a point that Genuine is lip singing, and he's not even a good lip singer. That's the thing. You you aren't putting the feeling in your voice that comes across in the song. So you compensate that with theatrics and animation. Like you're moving the sound with your hand and you're making the face. You're making a face that does not coincide with how you're singing on the song. But you got your face on the big screen and you're out there, but it may be time for Gene Mind to take a break a little bit. I mean, nothing wrong with staying booked and busy. I mean, you were at SeaWorld, they say you live on the road, and I'm starting to believe that. And Genuine, I think his last album had to be over 10 or 15 years ago. But when it comes to Tyrese, Genuine, and Tank, like I said, are closely associated with each other. Genuine's first four albums, man, dominated. 106 in Park had to retire him a couple of times. And who can forget that infamous live performance on 106 in Park where he came out on the stretcher? Just the kind of extra you need. And what was the song that went with that? Oh, couldn't even tell you. I just remember that part. But the it's good for the ladies. I think they're definitely going to be speaking to the late 30 and over crowd, my generation that grew up on that kind of music. I really want to know because I wasn't as clocked in to either one of their music catalog after a certain period. What the list is gonna like? What are they gonna go back and forth with? I mean, Tyrese could probably dust tank with the first two albums. Um, he probably has a couple of cheat codes. That's the other thing. The Verses is very good for reminding people of other stuff because I think Tyrese has written for other people or has done duets or features back in the day that we completely forgot about. And I know Tank has as well. I mean, Tank can definitely pull an Aaliyah cheat card, probably a genuine cheat card, as can Tyrese. I mean, Tyrese and Genuine did Best Man I Can Be together. That would probably eat up anything Tank has in response. Um, just trying to think, what else can Tank do? Hmm. Like I said, I'll be dialed in to see because it's been a minute since I was clocked in, but it'll probably be a good one. I was just like y'all. At first, I'm like, who asked for this? And why in late March? That's not a lovers or lady. I don't know. I don't get it. But um, I think for verses to really get results out of its shelf life or to get some kind of shelf life going is to have probably like a verses once a month. And I'm talking about you have so many artists out here from the 90s that you could pair them together and really get a lot of us to sit up and be like, oh shit, I gotta clear my evening for this. Haven't had a moment like that since, if we're being honest, Brandy and Monica. Babyface and Teddy Riley, that could have been one for the books, but Teddy Riley's Wi-Fi setup was janky all throughout that damn thing. Nelly and Ludacris was cool. That's when I realized it was starting to get a little too random for me. I was like, I wouldn't have put Nelly with Ludacris. I probably would have put Nelly with maybe T.I. I probably would have put Ludacris with, ooh, who would Ludacris go with? Hmm, not Ludacris with Wayne. Um, Ludacris with, ooh, Busta if Missy wasn't able. Busta and Missy would have been crazy. But so many opportunities. A Meth versus Redman, a Ghostface versus Raekwon, Sade versus Anita Baker. Um, they did some gospel ones that were cute. Um, Yolanda Adams versus CeCe Winans, maybe. It or one of the Clark sisters, but I'm just thinking. So it, I think it would behoove versus after Timberland and Swiss Beats selling it out to Elon allegedly that they get some rotating schedule once a month, do a verses on a Sunday with two artists that have at least an hour of material that they can play. It doesn't have to be the full song. First verse, bridge. Now it's your turn. But it that the other thing about it is we all go for good business, but some things are you probably just shouldn't sell. It the term sellout is very much prominent these days. But I think because it's survival mode these days, that we kind of overlook that. And we just tend to forget that, like, this is what happens when you sell something you created to the highest bidder. And then you're ultimately left with inconsistency, and people are more conscious now as to what's going on behind the curtain, that they're like, nah, you can keep it, because they had a relatively routine schedule. Even if some of the matchups were random as hell, they were doing it from the house. Then they went to the stage. When they got to the stage, it was all kinds of madness. You can tell who needed it and who probably was like, I can't believe I skipped the tour date for this. You can tell who's been out of practice, who has been out of touch with the other folks in the group versus who's who's been born to do this. And that was probably the moment they realized, yeah, this is a lot. First of all, we shouldn't be out the house in tight quarters, in the third season of the pandemic Demi Moore anyway. But I think that was probably when they realized, yeah, we probably need to wrap this on up, give it, like, sell it, and move on to something else. But alas, it's like, what did we get out of it? We don't went back to work. We don't put that person back, back in office, and we're suffering probably more than we did 3 or 4 years ago. It'll be very, very interesting. Don't pay any mind to my life. We you know we working on it. We are definitely working on it. But to me, there's always a silver lining. Hopefully, this versus that's coming up towards the end of the month. Actually, I think in a couple of days, will set the stage to bringing back verses again. I feel like all it takes is that one good one. And Tank has been active enough through the R&B Money podcast that that's the excitement for us. Tank probably doesn't need to do it. Tank is very much of the brotherhood, supporting other acts and being a good friend, and definitely going to bring his personality. And I just hope Tyrese lasts. I mean, they're friends, so it's like I don't think Tyrese is going to go too off the track. I hope he doesn't have an MH situation on the verses. Um, I hope he comes up with a really good set, because don't get me wrong. Tyrese got some songs that still stick, and 2000 Watts may very well be one of his most underrated albums. It, 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 I really want Tyrese to remind people who he is. Put the corny shit aside. Stick to the music. Don't bring any kind of monologues about the ex-wife, the child support stuff, the court drama. You can't help that. You really, really, really can't help that. So I'll reiterate this again. Versus Tyrese versus Tank is coming up. Winner of the verses gets custody of Genuine. Please, somebody take custody of Genuine. Please. That's all I got. Ain't got no more. I'm gonna be logged in. Continue to support the I Refuse podcast YouTube channel, the I Refuse podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, Usual Suspects podcast, and I Refuse podcast after dark. Wherever you get your podcasts, continue to follow, subscribe to original Black content. Ta-da! Right here. We will catch you guys later. Peace. Fendi, like the bag. This is the I Refuse.